welcome. You're watching Global Lens. I'm Parikshit Luthra. These are the top global headlines we are tracking. Nepal plunges into political uncertainty. Prime Minister KP Oli resigns after violent protests over corruption and social media ban leaves 19 people dead. Nepal's finance minister gets attacked on the streets as demonstrations continue. All flights cancelled at Kathmandu airport. India appeals for calm. Israel bombs Qatar's capital, Doha. Israeli military claims to have targeted Hamas leadership. Qatar calls it a criminal attack and a flagrant violation of all international laws. Media baron Rupert Murdoch finalizes a family settlement and succession. The eldest son, Lachlan Murdoch, cements control over the media empire that includes Fox News and Wall Street Journal. 3 other Murdoch siblings will sell their personal holdings within 6 months. Our top story, Gen Zs in Nepal have risen against their government. Initially, it was seen as a protest over banning of social media platforms. The country had banned social media platforms like Facebook, YouTube, WhatsApp, Instagram and Snapchat, claiming that these platforms hadn't complied with the new registration rules and the deadline for the same. However, the main reason now seems to be corruption in the country. Close to 20 people have lost their lives and over 400 injured in this protest. And the consequences of this has been that the government of Nepal has fallen, with Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli resigning, followed by reports that the President Ramchandra Podel may be next. However, Podel issued a statement saying that the resignation of Oli has been accepted and he has urged all parties to work together to find a peaceful solution. That's not all. He urged the protesters to engage in dialogue and maintain peace in the country. He was joined by army chiefs who are making a rare appeal and called for restraint and urged the protesters to prevent further loss of lives. This call for peace was on the back of violent protests that led to protesters storming the residence of several prominent politicians, including the president's office and also the office of the country's largest party, Nepali Congress, and the parliament. Meanwhile, some politicians, like Nepal's finance minister, couldn't save himself from the anger of protesters. As a viral video suggests, he was chased by an angry mob. We cannot independently verify the authenticity of these pictures. Meanwhile, most flights to Nepal have been cancelled and many diverted. Many Indian airlines have issued a statement saying flights to Nepal have been cancelled. Further, India has asked citizens to exercise caution and avoid travelling to Nepal. What's next for Nepal and what does this mean for India and Nepal ties as there is friction in another country in the neighborhood? Let me now go across to our guests. We're joined by Sanjay Bhardwaj, Professor, Center for South Asian Studies, School of International Studies at JNU. Sanjay Bhardwaj, what has triggered this public anger? It's not possible for such a large number of people to come together, and clearly it's not just about a social media ban now.
I think the immediate cause you can find out that while the social media these platforms have been banned and the people had come out because this was the only means to show their frustration to the people, and there were a lot of things were circulating about the Nipo kids and all that kinds of things, and then there were allegations against the politicians and the government regarding the buying of the planes and all that, But I think we're going to need to have one retrospective analysis of these all developments. The Nepali society has been highly mobilized, or you can say highly politicized over last 3 decades. And you can see, and this politicization has also polarized the people, in fact, along the party lines, along the ideologies. You can see that after 1989, when there were movement against the monarch to reinstate and restore democracy, democracy was reinstated in 1990 after a constitution, but it could not work. And finally, 1996, that Maoist has adopted violent movement against the government and against the monarch. And this had happened for the next 10 years. But in 2006, there were another big movement like this against the monarch, and that monarch the king has to leave the palace. And then after that, that Nepal has become a republic, and you can say that one caretaker interim constitutional assembly was formed, but it could not come out in the consensus to form a government. The second time constitutional assembly was formed, and in 2015 there was a constitution. And after this constitution, you can see that in there are political instability in Nepal. So in 17 years, you can see around 13 governments have changed. Six prime ministers have changed, and same people are rotating. So it has been found that the politics in Nepal is Kathmandu centric, and basically rotating in few influential families and people. They are enjoying the power, and they could not, there were a lot of expectations to the civil society and the people. Once the democracy will be instated after the monarch, they will have good employment, they will have good health, education, and all that. But finally, they have found that these politicians, they're sending their kids to the abroad, they're enjoying all the luxuries, and the Nepalis, they are forced to leave and migrate to other countries. There are data like
So there is a lot
every
of anger.
day. Yes,
There's a lot of anger over
every day.
corruption,
Yes.
unemployment, lack of opportunities, inequality. Let me also get in Lieutenant General Rakesh Sharma at this point. Lieutenant General Sharma, could there be any political force behind this massive protest, this massive public anger that we've seen, especially in the younger generation? Could there be an outside force?
Thank you for inviting me. And at the outside, I must say that at this juncture, it doesn't look that there's an outside force. As has been rightly pointed out, there has been a youth problem for a very long time. As we said, there are about 7 to 9 lakh children are leaving every year from Nepal, not coming to India, but going all over the world for taking up a job and employment. There is no employment avenues. Of a basic issue among the youth anger is that there is an economic insecurity. There is no jobs available. There is hyperinflation across there. So there are very big problems here. And then second, of course, the major issue is that there is no stable government. The governments keep changing. In this present case only, same Nepali Congress was supporting earlier Prachanda, and then they withdrew from Prachanda and started supporting Oli. There is no rationality in how the governments are being changed across in Nepal. So there is a political upheaval there. People are unhappy about the constitution, and they want the constitution to be amended. And of course, there is institutionalized corruption. The foreign minister, which is wife of Shehbaz Dioba, has been accused earlier of serious corruption issues there. So the fact of the matter is that there is something pent up in Nepal for quite some time, and it had to come out in the form of youth. The youth cannot be handled the way the youth have been handled in the course of last 5 to 6 days.
Right.
The Supreme Court.
Lieutenant General Sharma, what I'd also like to ask you, so currently the president, the army chief, they've appealed for calm. Who is practically in control of things at the moment in Nepal?
So, see, at any one, Nepal has got 77 districts. It's a very vast area, and only Kathmandu is not Nepal. But then, there are protests all over the country. There is a Balen Shah, people call him Balendra, but Balen is what everybody calls him in Kathmandu. He has turned around Kathmandu city quite a bit in the course of last 2-3 years that he has been the mayor of the metropolitan area. And he has earned tremendous amount of respect in Nepal as a man to be watched out in future, and he is young. So the fact is that Balen is a fellow to a gentleman to be looked forward to earlier. It's been stated in hushed tongues that Balen will be the future of Nepal. So one is that there is a control, or there is a mayor of Kathmandu city, larger Kathmandu city, who is in control and people respect him. Nobody went across to his house to burn, but they've gone to Supreme Court judges and everybody else. One is Balen Shah. Second is the Nepal Army. It's a very respected institution. It is liked as as an institution. So Nepal Army did not open fire. It's the police who did that. So Nepal Army is under respect, and the statement given by the chief Sengdel, along with the other security fellows, is all saying, "Have calm, we will sort it out." And third is the issue of
Right.
the president. The president still holds it. But how will the issues be handled hereafter? Will they, first is, will they, get the assembly off? People don't want this parliament to continue, because this parliament has made mockery of the whole political process in Nepal. So they'll have to, they want this thing to go away. So that's a very big issue here.
Correct.
And second is to have an interim government. And I think if the interim government, my guesswork is, if the army props up Balen Shah to come and take over as the prime minister, the interim government head or something, or caretaker, he will get much more respect than the present politicians have been getting across.
Very important point. Let me go across to Sanjay Bhardwaj once again. Mr. Bhardwaj, now, what do you think can be a healing balm for the people of Nepal? What can normalize the situation, according to you?
I think let me also answer the first questions about the external powers. I do find that yes, extra regional powers had been very active in Nepal for last a decade and more. You can see that the way the KP Oli was trying to incline himself towards the China, and the Chinese embassy has worked sometimes like a political party in Kathmandu, and this KP Oli was also very active in Shanghai Cooperation Organization. So I think that did not made comfortable to many of the Nepali people there. And even the extra regional powers, again, I would say the Americans, and they were not liking, because Nepal is very important, keeping Tibet, bordering with Tibet, and that Americans, they have very deep interest in Tibet and all that. So I think there are something, these factors also work that, and you must remember that there is one political party, that RSP, Rashtriya Swatantra Party, that Lamichana. Ravi Lamachana is basically, he was US citizen, and he came here and contested elections, very popular in the youth. And this man, you can somehow you can find behind these kinds of activities in Nepal. So you cannot
All right.
totally rule out about the external involvement.
Very briefly, I'm running out of time. I want to put one quick question to both of you. One, starting with you, Mr. Bhardwaj, what are the implications for India? We've seen disturbances in Bangladesh. Now we are seeing massive disturbance in Nepal. What is the immediate ramification for India because of the situation in Nepal?
Yeah, always work to bring political stability in the neighboring countries, including Nepal. And we were the promoter of the democracy. But since the different political constituents has gone beyond India, and that this has created a lot of problem. I'm sure that they will work with India, and India will definitely take care of these political stability, economic development, and security of these states. And I think we will prosper together. And I think these states like Sri Lanka got the lesson. Bangladesh will get the lesson, and now Nepal is in the queue, and they will understand that India is very responsible regional partner, and they should work with India. That would be better for the betterment of these peoples, including Nepalis.
All
And
right.
youth will.
Lieutenant General Sharma, your thoughts on how India could be impacted, India-Nepal relations could be impacted?
So I, think that we should have come up in support of democracy and in support of the peoples of Nepal as a statement. As the issue started 3-4 days ago, I think a statement came a wee bit too late. But then, India has always been accused of interference and of being condescending and not supported. So there is not that the people of Nepal are against us, but then the people of Nepal do feel that India does tend to interfere. So we have to now follow a very fine line. It's not a very simple proposition for India to do so. The peoples are the open borders, people come and go. There is a great amount of relationship we have in cultural and many other ways. But the Chinese have made tremendous amount of inroads into Nepal, specifically because they have deep pockets, and they have invested largely into the people, the political parties, especially in Oli's case, and initially in the case of Prachanda also. So the fact is that our involvement, that's why Nepal is said to be a yam between two boulders. So I'll end here by saying that while we have to exercise caution, we have to watch and wait and, not get over interfering into at this juncture. It will boomerang against us, as Indians are the ones who brought about this kind of problem that's happening to the political parties, because they say that we were not fond of Prime Minister Oli earlier.
Right. Thank you so much, Lieutenant General Rakesh Sharma and Sanjay Bhardwaj, for joining us. We're taking a break here on Global Lens. Coming up, France has been thrown into a fresh political crisis as its Prime Minister Francois Bayrou has been ousted by Parliament. How does this impact France? Details on the other side. Welcome back to Global Lens. France has been thrown into a fresh political crisis. Prime Minister Francois Bayrou has lost a crucial confidence vote in the National Assembly, defeated by 364 votes to 194. The outcome effectively forces Bayrou to present his government's resignation to President Emmanuel Macron, with the Elysee saying a decision on his replacement will be made in the coming days. This latest political shake-up means France is now heading towards its fifth prime minister in less than 2 years, a record that underscores the turbulence of Macron's second term. Bayrou's fall came after he tied his government's survival to an emergency confidence debate on public finances. He had sought backing for a plan to rein in France's ballooning deficit, nearly double the European Union's 3% ceiling, and to start addressing a towering debt load equal to 114% of GDP, the highest in the Eurozone. For Macron, the challenge now is to not just find a new prime minister, but restoring stability at the heart of Europe's second largest economy. Joining me now to discuss this further is Jawed Ashraf, India's former ambassador to France. Ambassador Ashraf, thank you very much for joining us. What do you think this means for the French government and, more importantly, President Macron immediately?
Well, I think this was something which was not a surprise at all. This was expected. There is no way that any government in the current composition of the National Assembly can bring about stability. As you know, there are three broad factions comprising a number of smaller political parties. So you've got the socialist left, New Popular Front. You've got the centrist coalition led of President Macron, and of course you have the far right coalition led by Marine Le Pen. And no one is actually ever going to come close to a majority of 289. The left front has 183, President's coalition 163, and Marine Le Pen's 143. So whoever gets elected, whoever gets nominated or appointed as the prime minister has got a Herculean task of trying to cobble together a working majority in this assembly. And one of the reasons for this is that politics in France is now highly fractured. The two dominant and rising forces in French politics what in political vocabulary is called far right, which is Marie Le Pen's party. I think the party which is perhaps the most popular at the moment in France, and the far left, which is the LFI, or France Unbending, as if you translate that into English, of Jean-Luc Mélenchon. And that is also a very, very strong party. And in between, there is a wide array of centrist, conservative, socialist, communist parties with very small numbers. So I think we have seen the same thing happen over and over again. The problem today is that France is facing, as you've just mentioned, an extraordinary fiscal challenge. Its fiscal deficit is nearing 6% of the GDP, and its debt to GDP ratio has climbed to 114%,
Right.
which is well above both parameters about the EU norms. Now, 44 billion euros are sought to be cut between now and 2027, 28. And I think that has become a sort of an instrument with which to force another round of National Assembly election. I don't think that immediately President Macron is going to consider that option. You know, he did dissolve the National Assembly after a poor showing in the European Parliament election in 2024 June. And in that election, his own party went down from 245, his coalition, to 143. And I think
Ashraf, there are calls for President Macron to resign. Do you think he will do so? Next step can he take in order to put stability in the government?
First, I think he doesn't seem like the person who's going to take that decision very easily. He has continued to plow through this or plod through this process. He is quite determined to stay in office till 2027. One of his great nightmares is that he will be succeeded or handing over the keys of Élysée Palace to Marie Le Pen, who is, of course, gaining in popularity. And in some sense, it is a reflection of his own disruption of politics in France in 2017, when he broke the traditional conservative socialist divide, created a new center, which led to the splintering of the polity. Many of the socialist and the centrist Republicans came to his party, but many left for the far right and the far left. And we are seeing today the end of what one might call the Macronian era. But whether he will resign or no is a very, very difficult question. I think that is what Marie Le Pen and others want. But to force a presidential election, impeachment process can be tried, but there is no way it can succeed in the current assembly. And of course, you have an instance in the past in the diarchical system when in 1969 the father of the founder of the Fifth Republic, President Charles de Gaulle, did resign in 1969 when there were widespread protests in Paris. If all of you remember, the 1968 Paris protests was just very, very widely covered throughout the world. So I think that today we have a situation when he's getting more and more into a dead end. But as you know, that the president in France enjoys wields a lot of power under the constitution in the Fifth Republic. He can nominate a prime minister from within the assembly or from outside. He can dismiss it, and dissolve the assembly.
So that brings me to my next question, Ambassador Ashraf. Who do you think could be the next prime minister, possibly the sixth one in the last few years?
You know, I think you have essentially once again back to the drawing board. Now, he is not going to, certainly, let's say what he won't do. He's not going to allow, say, somebody from a national rally, Marie Le Pen's party, or her coalition to be the prime minister, something that she's also likely to decline because she wouldn't want to be set up for failure as she looks ahead to the 2027 presidential election, assuming that the election takes place on schedule and not before that. So that leaves him with either the right-wing parties. He's tried Michel Barnier and François Bayrou. Both of them failed to get anything in terms of a stable government. He could try again someone from his centrist coalition. Gabriel Attal was his favorite protege, but he also had to resign. He couldn't keep the government going. They're talking about Sébastien Lecornu, who's the current defense minister. He could try to call back Cazeneuve from the socialist side, but only on the condition that he will get the support of the Socialist Party, which he had, of course, deserted later. But there is the only way that one can see a stable government going on till 2027 will be for someone from the broad left, but with a centrist inclinations, taking over as the prime minister. But the big challenge, and there, of course, they'll have to do two things. One is that ensure that the Popular Front, which is the left coalition, will support.
Right.
And second, that the centrists will support, because between the two of them, they can cobble together a majority. But that
Ambassador
would
Ashraf?
mean, in just 2 minutes, just
Yeah.
revisiting some of the key achievements of President Macron over the past 7 years. The trouble here, of course, is that he is not likely to agree to a revision in pension reforms, tax cuts, which has actually helped the French economy in great measure, at least in terms of growth, if not in fiscal space. And the other problem will be the largest party of the left coalition, which is the LFI, or Jean-Luc Mélenchon. He's not likely to support. But I think even without the LFI, a socialist centrist government with some elements of support from the Republican Party, which is the center right, can form a what one might call a centrist coalition involving the conservatives, the centrist coalition of President Macron, and the moderate left parties.
Okay.
They can together form a government, but depends on whether the socialists will support one of their own.
Very, very important. And finally, Ambassador Ashraf, now when it comes to the presidential election, life beyond President Macron, and that's what a lot of investors, a lot of companies who have big stakes in France would be thinking about. If we need to think about the political future of the government there and possibly the next president, who currently is the strongest contender according to you?
If during the last election, the France has a system of a second round. After a number of candidates enter the fray in the first round, the first two then have a runoff. And so the one who gets more than 50% obviously is the president. Last time, Marine Le Pen had 42.5% against President Macron, despite the fact that almost every other party had turned around to support President Macron. And he also admitted in 2022 in his victory speech that a large number of the votes were not for him, but against Marine Le Pen. Since then, her party, RN, has gained a lot of ground. Now, she faces a challenge. She's currently debarred from contesting elections because of a corruption case involving funds for the European Parliament, which she's fighting and she's appealing against. There are many others who would be in the fray from President Macron's party, including Gérald Darmanin. You have the very popular former Prime Minister, Edouard Philippe, who was a very serious contender. You could still have François Bayrou fancying his chance. He's always dreamt of being the president. But, this is still too early to say. I just thought of some names that came to my mind. He wants to push President Macron, would like to push either Gabriel Attal, who's now fallen out with him, or his trusted defense minister, Sébastien Lecornu, who's sort of a great bridge builder and a very, very sort of a low-key person to fight for it. But I would say that this is in 2025, it is still too early to think in terms of who would be the front runner. But most people try to think either in terms of Edouard Philippe or in terms of Xavier Bertrand, in terms of us with some of the conservative Republicans, or Marie Le Pen, or any of her party members being quite serious contenders. But don't forget that Jean-Luc Mélenchon from the far left always ends up in the top three, at least in the last two elections. And so, he still fancies his chance. He will, at best, be a serious contender, in my opinion.
All right, Ambassador Ashraf, we've run out of time, but thank you so much for joining us. doing election analysis, political analysis in France for us. And you're someone who understands French politics, diplomacy, and the society very, very well. Thank you so much for joining us here on Global Lens.